I realize that a lot of my stories begin with the morning newspaper, but nonetheless, here we are. A couple weeks ago, just reading the paper like I always do, and I was going through the sports page, and it was fairly normal stuff. Mark Bradley was ripping on the Georgia Tech coach. And, the Thrashers were winning at that point, and then they started losing, and now they're winning again. And my Syracuse Orange were the #1 ranked basketball team in the country. That was nice. That lasted all of a week, but it was good while it lasted. And I was just reading along, and you know, the sports page is kind of like People or Us Weekly, but for guys. You know, it's fun, but it's brainless and stupid. That's how I like to start out my mornings, by reading something brainless and stupid. And that says, hey, you need to read this article from the front page. And at the time, as I mentioned, we were buying a car. We have since bought a car, but we were looking at Toyotas, and specifically the Prius. And the Prius had a bad habit of driving itself. I don't know if you followed that at all, but they have a tendency to, you know, just sort of take off. And, you know, I've seen Christine, I've read the book, I'm not interested in a car that does things on its own. So we decided not to get one. But we were following the stories that were related to it. And at that point, you know, we had decided to not buy a Toyota, but nonetheless, this story really grabbed our attention. It's the story of this guy named Kua Fong Lee. And what happened was in 2006, Mr. Lee was driving home from church on I-94. And in the car with him was his pregnant wife, his father, brother, and niece. And as he got off the interstate, his car started going faster. And he said that he pumped the brakes, he pumped the brakes, he pumped the brakes, and it still got up to 70 miles an hour on the ramp. And it ended up hitting two cars parked at a stoplight at the ramp. He killed a 33-year-old, a 10-year-old, and later a 6-year-old died as a result of the accident. And he was charged with vehicular manslaughter. And during the trial, over and over, he said, I was pumping the brakes, and the car didn't do anything. In 2006, nobody had any idea that there was any problem with Toyotas at all. So, you know, the prosecutors were just like, whatever. And they thought he was making it up. The only thing they found, okay, that was a little loud. The only thing that they found was that the throttle was off. That was it. That was the only thing that they found. So they didn't pay any attention. And, you know, and at the time, nobody thought anything was wrong with Toyotas. And to be honest, you know, I probably wouldn't have paid much attention to the story myself, and Beth wouldn't have called it to my attention, except for the fact that the car he was driving was a 1996 Camry, which is what I drove. I don't know what happened to Mr. Lee's car. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know what was wrong with it. I don't know if anything was wrong with it. I don't know if he was just confused or what. But the dude claims, and if you look at him and you watch an interview with him, you would absolutely believe that he has been in jail for years because somebody at another company, because somebody at Toyota screwed up. And the idea of that happening to me doesn't sit real well. It's not something that's pleasant. Of course, stuff like this happens. I mean, people go to jail all the time for things they didn't do. We suffer unjustly for things that we don't do. Some are worse than others, but it can be tough to handle. And what I want to talk about today is something that happened in the history of Israel, which is that some of the people in Israel had been doing things that were against God's will. And so God had to tear the country down and start over. The problem is, some of them did it and some of them didn't. And they all suffered. It's not fair. And so God has a message for them. What I'm going to read for you now is from the book of Isaiah, and it's part of a section of Isaiah that's actually like, it's called the Book of Comfort. It's Isaiah chapter 43. And it's written to these people who have suffered when they haven't done anything wrong. So I want to read this to you now. And just listen to it and reflect on it, and then we'll have a bit of quiet when you hear the chime. Come back to worship. God says, I am the Lord, who opened a way through the waters, making a dry path through the sea. I called forth the mighty army of Egypt with all its chariots and horses. I drew them beneath the waves and they drowned, their lives snuffed out like a smoldering candle wick. But forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I am going to do. For I am about to do a brand new thing. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? It will make a pathway through the wilderness for my people to come home. I will create rivers for them in the desert. The wild animals in the field will thank me, the jackals and ostriches too, for giving them water in the wilderness. Yes, I will make springs in the desert so that my chosen people can be refreshed. I have made Israel for myself, and they will someday honor me before the whole world.